The entire kingdom watched her fall into silence, until the Lycan King stood from his throne and walked toward the Omega everyone had chosen to ignore. The grand halls of Ravensshire Palace had never been this crowded. Under the glow of hundreds of golden candles, nobles from every corner of the Lycan Kingdom gathered for the annual Luna ceremony, a night meant to honor tradition, alliances, and the future of their people. Among the elegant guests stood Sophia Bennett, a 24-year-old Omega woman who had spent her entire life learning how to remain unnoticed. She wore a simple but beautiful white dress, carefully prepared for a ceremony that she hoped would finally allow others to see her as more than the forgotten daughter of a powerful family. But Sophia knew better than anyone that appearances could be deceiving. Behind the smiles of the guests and the beauty of the palace, she had always felt like an outsider. Her stepsisters Victoria and Charlotte had grown up believing they deserved every privilege, while Sophia was treated as someone who should stay in the background. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight she wanted only one chance to stand with dignity. As the ceremony began, the grand doors opened, and the Lycan King entered the hall. Alexander Ravensshire, the 35-year-old ruler of the kingdom, carried the presence of someone who had spent years protecting his people. His black and silver royal clothing reflected his position, but his calm expression revealed a leader who watched more than he spoke. Every person in the room lowered their gaze with respect. Sophia looked toward him only briefly before returning her attention to the ceremony. She never imagined that the most powerful man in the kingdom would notice her. But Alexander did. He noticed the quiet Omega standing alone while everyone else competed for attention. He noticed the way she remained polite even when others ignored her. He noticed something rare in a world obsessed with status. He noticed genuine kindness. Moments later, the atmosphere in the hall changed. Sophia's stepsisters approached her with false smiles and hidden intentions. They wanted the entire kingdom to believe Sophia was unworthy of standing among them. The whispers grew louder as the ceremony continued, and Sophia felt the familiar pain of being judged before anyone knew her heart. Yet she refused to let anger take control. She simply lowered her eyes, held on to her dignity, and reminded herself that someone else's cruelty could never define her worth. Across the hall, Alexander watched carefully. He had seen countless people seek power, attention, and influence, but he had rarely seen someone remain gentle while facing humiliation. For the first time in years, the Lycan King found himself curious about a person who wanted nothing from him. As the ceremony reached its most important moment, the crowd expected a night of tradition. They did not expect a moment that would change the future of the kingdom forever. They did not know that the quiet Omega they overlooked would soon become the person who challenged everything they believed about strength, worth, and destiny. The silence inside Ravensshire Palace felt heavier than before. Sophia Bennett stood beneath the golden lights of the ceremony hall, surrounded by nobles who watched her with curiosity and judgment. She had spent years learning how to endure quiet rejection, but this moment felt different. She was no longer invisible. Everyone had noticed her, yet very few truly saw her. Sophia understood the difference. Being noticed because of rumors was not the same as being valued for who she was. The whispers around her grew stronger as the ceremony continued. Some guests questioned why an Omega from a lesser branch of the family had been allowed to stand among the noble houses. Others simply watched, waiting to see if she would lose her composure. But Sophia remained still. She remembered every moment when she had been told she was not important enough, not powerful enough, or not worthy enough. Instead of letting those words break her, she had used them to build quiet strength within herself. Across the hall, Alexander Ravensshire continued observing her. The Lycan King had attended countless ceremonies, witnessed endless displays of ambition, and listened to people speak about honor while secretly chasing recognition. But Sophia was different. She did not try to impress anyone. She did not seek his attention. She simply stood with a calmness that surprised him. Alexander had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from the throne. Sophia was the first person he had seen who seemed to want nothing at all. As the ceremony moved forward, Sophia's stepsisters stayed close, their smiles appearing perfect to everyone watching. Victoria and Charlotte had always known how to present themselves as elegant and graceful in public. They understood how to gain admiration from the crowd. Sophia, however, had never been interested in creating an image. She had always believed that a person's true character was revealed when no one was watching. That belief was the reason she remained kind, even when kindness was not returned. Near the center of the hall, the final part of the ceremony began. The royal families gathered as the Lycan traditions were announced. Sophia tried to focus on the moment, but she could feel the attention surrounding her. She knew that one mistake would become another reason for people to judge her. Then something unexpected happened. Alexander stepped away from the royal gathering and looked directly toward Sophia. The entire hall noticed. Conversations stopped. The nobles became silent. The Lycan King, a man who rarely moved without purpose, had chosen to approach the one person everyone else had overlooked. Sophia looked at him with surprise. She could not understand why the most powerful person in the kingdom would be interested in someone like her. Alexander stopped before her, his expression calm but thoughtful. "You have been standing here all night while everyone decided who they think you are," he said quietly. "But I would rather know who you truly are." Sophia did not know how to answer. No one had asked her that question before. Not in a way that felt sincere. In that moment something shifted between them. The Lycan King did not see an Omega who needed to be saved. He saw a person who had remained strong despite being unseen. And Sophia realized that for the first time in her life, someone with great power was looking at her with respect instead of judgment. The moment Alexander Ravenshair spoke to Sophia Bennett remained in the minds of everyone inside the ceremony hall. The Lycan King had always been known for his distance and careful decisions, so his choice to approach an overlooked Omega surprised the entire court. But Alexander was not interested in the opinions of others. He had spent years learning how to read people beyond their titles, and what he saw in Sophia was something rare. She carried herself with quiet strength, even when the entire room expected her to feel small. After the ceremony ended, Sophia returned to the guest quarters prepared for the noble families. She thought about everything that had happened and wondered why the king had chosen to speak with her. She was not someone who belonged at the center of attention. She had spent most of her life staying away from conflict, helping others when she could, and accepting the place her family had given her. Yet Alexander had looked at her as if he saw a person she had always hoped someone would recognize. The following morning, Sophia walked through the palace gardens, searching for a moment of peace away from the endless conversations of the court. Ravenshair Palace was unlike anything she had ever known. The towering stone walls, carefully designed gardens, and royal symbols surrounding every corner reminded her that she was standing in a world built around power and tradition. But despite the grandeur, Sophia noticed something unexpected. Many people inside the palace carried their own hidden burdens. Servants, nobles, and even members of the royal family all seemed to be searching for something they could not easily find. Meanwhile, Alexander watched over the kingdom from his private study. The Lycan King had many responsibilities, but his thoughts kept returning to Sophia. He remembered the way she remained composed while others judged her. He remembered that she never once tried to gain his favor. That was what interested him the most. In a world where many people approached the throne hoping for influence, Sophia had simply been herself. Later that day, Alexander invited Sophia to walk through the palace gardens. The request surprised her, but she accepted. As they walked beneath the tall trees, the conversation felt different from the formal discussions she was used to hearing from nobles. Alexander did not ask about her family name or her connections. Instead, he asked about her dreams, her experiences, and the things that mattered to her. Sophia was uncertain at first. She was not accustomed to someone powerful showing genuine interest in her thoughts. "Most people already decided who I was before they ever spoke to me," Sophia admitted quietly. Alexander looked at her with understanding. "Then they never gave themselves the chance to know you," he replied. His words stayed with her. For years, Sophia had believed that being ignored was something she simply had to accept. But standing beside the Lycan King, she began to realize that perhaps her worth had never depended on how others treated her. It had always existed within her. As the days passed, the court began noticing the growing respect between Alexander and Sophia. Some were confused, while others questioned the reason behind the king's interest. But Alexander remained certain. He had not been drawn to Sophia because she was an Omega. He was drawn to the person she was beneath every label others placed upon her. And without realizing it, Sophia had begun changing the way the Lycan King viewed strength, loyalty, and what it truly meant to stand beside someone worthy. The days following the Luna ceremony brought a quiet change throughout Ravensshire Palace. The kingdom had not forgotten the moment when the Lycan King stepped away from tradition and spoke with Sophia Bennet, the Omega everyone had overlooked. Some nobles remained uncertain, unable to understand why Alexander Ravensshire had shown such interest in someone without a powerful family name. But others began watching Sophia more closely, slowly noticing the qualities that the king had already recognized. Sophia continued her days inside the palace with the same humility she had always carried. She did not act differently because people now paid attention to her. She still greeted the servants warmly, offered help when someone needed it, and treated everyone with the same respect regardless of their position. Alexander noticed this more than anything else. Many people changed when they entered the world of royalty. They became focused on appearances, influence, and recognition. Sophia remained exactly the same. Her kindness was not a performance. It was simply who she was. However, not everyone in the palace welcomed the change. Sophia's stepsisters, Victoria and Charlotte, struggled to accept that the attention they once received was now shifting. They believed status and beauty were the reasons people deserved respect. Seeing Alexander value Sophia for her character challenged everything they believed. They continued trying to remind others of Sophia's past, hoping people would judge her before knowing the truth. But their words began losing their effect. The more people observed Sophia, the more they understood why the Lycan King respected her. Meanwhile, Alexander began looking deeper into Sophia's history. He wanted to understand the person behind the quiet smile and gentle nature. What he discovered surprised him. Sophia had spent years supporting her family, helping others, and remaining patient despite being treated unfairly. She had every reason to become bitter, yet she chose compassion instead. For a ruler who had spent his life surrounded by competition and ambition, this was something extraordinary. One evening, Alexander met Sophia in the palace library. The room was peaceful, filled with ancient books and the soft glow of candlelight. He asked her why she never defended herself when others judged her so unfairly. Sophia paused before answering. I learned that proving myself to people who already decided against me would only take away my peace, she said. I cannot control what others choose to believe. I can only control the person I choose to become. Alexander remained silent for a moment. Her answer stayed with him because it revealed a strength he rarely saw. She was not ignoring her pain. She was choosing not to let it define her. That night, the Lycan King understood something important. Power could command attention, but character earned respect. As the days continued, rumors throughout the kingdom began changing. People no longer spoke about Sophia as the Omega who did not belong. They began speaking about her as the woman who had captured the attention of the Lycan King without asking for anything. Alexander knew the court would continue testing their understanding of her. He knew old traditions would not disappear overnight. But for the first time in years he believed change was possible. And the person who inspired that change was the one everyone had once chosen to ignore. The quiet changes within Ravensshire Palace continued to grow, even though many people were still uncertain about what they meant. Sophia Bennet had never entered the royal world expecting attention, yet every day she spent there revealed something that made people see her differently. She was not trying to prove that she deserved a place beside the powerful families of the kingdom. She simply continued being the same person she had always been. And that was exactly what made her impossible to ignore. As the days passed, Alexander Ravensshire invited Sophia to attend a royal gathering where representatives from different regions would visit the palace. It was an important event, one where every noble family wanted to present the strongest image possible. Sophia understood that many eyes would be on her, but she accepted the invitation calmly. She knew some people still questioned why the Lycan King valued her presence. Instead of allowing those doubts to create fear, she reminded herself that she had nothing to hide. She was not entering the gathering to compete with anyone. She was simply there as herself. Inside the grand hall, the atmosphere was filled with conversation and tradition. The nobles carefully watched Sophia, expecting to find something that would prove she did not belong. But they found the opposite. Sophia greeted everyone with respect, listened carefully, and showed kindness even to those who were unsure about her. Her actions spoke louder than any explanation could. Alexander observed the room from a distance, quietly noticing how different Sophia was from the people who usually surrounded the throne. Many sought approval from power, but Sophia brought peace instead of demands. Later, during a discussion with the royal advisors, some questioned whether an Omega could truly understand the responsibilities connected to the royal family. Alexander listened patiently before answering. He did not defend Sophia because she needed someone to speak for her. He defended her because the truth deserved to be recognized. A person's value is not decided by their title, Alexander said. It is revealed through their choices. Those words changed the atmosphere in the room. The advisors had expected the king to speak about tradition, but instead he spoke about character. Meanwhile, Sophia continued building connections throughout the palace. She became someone servants trusted, someone younger members of noble families looked up to, and someone many people respected because she never treated kindness as a weakness. However, Victoria and Charlotte remained unwilling to accept the changes happening around them. They believed Sophia's growing recognition was temporary, and that the kingdom would eventually remember her place. They did not understand that respect gained through sincerity was much stronger than attention gained through appearance. One evening, Sophia stood near the palace balcony, looking over the lights of Ravensshire Kingdom. Alexander joined her quietly. "You seem comfortable here now," he said. Sophia smiled softly. "I am learning that a place becomes home when people allow you to be yourself." Alexander looked at her thoughtfully. He realized that Sophia was not changing to fit into his world. She was reminding his world that it needed to change. The Lycan King had ruled for years believing that strength came from control and authority. But the Omega beside him showed him another kind of strength, one built on compassion and courage. And as the kingdom slowly began to recognize Sophia's true worth, Alexander knew the greatest transformation had already begun. The connection between Sophia Bennet and Alexander Ravensshire continued to grow quietly, but the entire kingdom could feel that something had changed. The Lycan King, who had always kept a careful distance from others, was now seen walking through the palace gardens with the Omega everyone once overlooked. Yet what surprised people most was not the attention Sophia received. It was the way Alexander seemed more at peace whenever she was near. For years, he had carried the responsibility of leading Ravensshire Kingdom alone. He had made decisions based on duty, tradition, and the expectations placed upon him. But Sophia showed him that a leader could also listen, understand, and care without losing strength. One afternoon, Alexander invited Sophia to visit the ancient archives beneath the palace. It was a place where generations of royal history had been preserved. Sophia was fascinated by the old records, not because they represented power, but because they represented the lives of the people who came before them. Alexander watched her carefully as she studied the writings. Unlike many nobles who searched for stories of victories and glory, Sophia looked for stories about ordinary people and their struggles. "You always look for the people behind the titles," Alexander said. Sophia smiled softly. "Because titles disappear with time. But the way someone treats others is what people remember." Her answer stayed with him. Alexander realized that this was the reason he respected her so deeply. Sophia did not challenge the throne by demanding a place beside it. She challenged it by reminding everyone what a throne was supposed to protect. However, the growing bond between them created uncertainty among some members of the royal court. Several advisors worried that old traditions were being questioned. They believed the position beside the Lycan King should be decided only by status and family connections. Sophia heard these concerns, but she did not allow them to change who she was. She had already spent enough years trying to earn acceptance from people who refused to understand her. Now she focused only on doing what she believed was right. Alexander noticed her confidence. He knew that many people would have become bitter after years of rejection, but Sophia had chosen a different path. She had transformed her experiences into compassion instead of resentment. That quality was something he admired more than any display of power. Later that evening, Alexander and Sophia stood together on the palace balcony overlooking the kingdom. The lights from the villages below created a peaceful view across the valley. "You know this path will not always be easy," Alexander said. Sophia looked toward the horizon. "I know. But difficult does not mean impossible. Her answer reminded him of the person she had always been. Someone who continued forward even when the world tried to convince her she did not belong. As the moon rose above Ravensire Palace, Alexander understood that his feelings for Sophia were no longer based only on admiration. He had found someone who saw the person behind the crown. And Sophia began to realize that the Lycan King was not simply protecting her from the judgment of others. He was creating a place where she could finally be valued for who she truly was. The bond between them was becoming stronger, and with it came a future neither of them had expected. The days passed quietly in Ravensire Kingdom, but the changes happening within the palace could no longer be ignored. Sophia Bennet, once the Omega everyone overlooked, had become someone the kingdom respected. She never asked for admiration, and she never tried to take a place that was not offered to her. Instead, she continued showing the same patience and kindness that had first caught the attention of the Lycan King. But as her presence grew stronger within the royal court, the truth about her past began to surface. Alexander Ravensire had always believed that the people closest to the throne should be honest and loyal. When he discovered more details about Sophia's life before arriving at the palace, he felt a quiet sadness. He learned about the years she spent being ignored, the moments when her efforts were dismissed, and the way she had been made to feel like she was less important than those around her. Yet what surprised him most was not what Sophia had endured. It was the fact that she had never allowed those experiences to change her heart. She had every reason to become distant and guarded, but instead she chose to remain compassionate. During a meeting with the royal advisors, Alexander spoke openly about the importance of judging people by their actions, rather than their background. Some members of the court still struggled to accept the idea that an Omega could hold such influence, but the king refused to let outdated beliefs decide the future of his kingdom. A person's place is not determined by where they begin, Alexander said. It is determined by the choices they make. His words created a new conversation throughout Ravensire. For generations, many had believed that power came from status alone. But Sophia's journey challenged that belief. She had no royal title, no family influence, and no desire to control others. Yet her presence had already changed the way people thought about leadership. Meanwhile, Sophia continued facing the attention with humility. She noticed that some people now treated her differently, but she did not allow praise to become another thing that controlled her. She remembered the quiet life she had before the ceremony, and the values that had guided her long before anyone knew her name. One evening, Alexander found Sophia near the palace gardens, helping young members of the royal household learn about the different plants that grew there. He watched as she patiently answered their questions and smiled at their curiosity. It reminded him that Sophia's strength was never about commanding attention. It was about making people feel seen. "You realize you are changing this place without trying to," Alexander told her. Sophia looked surprised. "I am only doing what feels right." Alexander smiled softly. "That is exactly why it matters." For the first time in many years, the Lycan King felt certain that the future of Ravensire Kingdom could become something different. Not because traditions were being abandoned, but because compassion was finally becoming part of them. As the kingdom slowly accepted Sophia, another truth became impossible to deny. The Omega who once stood alone during the ceremony had become the person who reminded everyone what true strength looked like. The morning light spread across Ravensire Kingdom, revealing a place that felt different. From the one Sophia Bennet had first entered, the palace walls remained the same, the royal traditions continued, and the responsibilities of the Lycan King remained unchanged. Yet something important had shifted. The people inside the kingdom were beginning to understand that strength was not always found in authority or status. Sometimes it appeared in the quiet actions of someone who had nothing to gain. Sophia had become a symbol of that truth. She never considered herself special. She simply continued living by the values she had carried since childhood. She helped those who needed support, listened when others spoke, and treated every person with respect. The same kindness that once made others underestimate her had become the very reason people admired her. Alexander Ravensire watched this transformation with pride. He had ruled the kingdom for many years, but he knew that true change could not be forced through commands. It had to come from understanding. Sophia had shown him that leadership was not only about protecting borders or making important decisions. It was also about creating a place where people felt valued. As the royal council prepared for the upcoming Unity celebration, Sophia was invited to stand beside Alexander before the kingdom. The event was meant to honor the traditions that connected every region of Ravensshire. Many expected the ceremony to focus on royal history and the strength of the Lycan bloodline. Instead, Alexander chose to highlight something different. He spoke about the importance of compassion and the responsibility of those with power to protect those who were often ignored. The crowd listened carefully as he explained that a kingdom could not become stronger by leaving certain people behind. Sophia stood beside him, feeling the weight of the moment. She remembered the night of the Luna ceremony when she had felt completely alone. She remembered the whispers, the judgment, and the feeling that nobody would ever see beyond the labels placed upon her. But now she stood in the same world, not because she had changed herself, but because people had finally recognized who she had always been. After the celebration, Sophia and Alexander walked through the palace gardens together. The evening air was calm, and the lights from the kingdom created a peaceful view across the valley. "You changed something here," Alexander said. Sophia looked at him with a gentle smile. "I did not change anything alone. People simply needed a reason to look at each other differently." Alexander understood the meaning behind her words. Sophia never wanted control over others. She wanted understanding. That was why she had become so important to him. She reminded him that a true leader did not stand above the people. A true leader stood with them. Meanwhile, the story of Sophia's journey continued spreading throughout Ravensshire. The Omega, once ignored by her own family, had become someone the kingdom respected. The people no longer remembered her as the woman who had been embarrassed during a ceremony. They remembered her as the person who proved that dignity could survive even the hardest moments. And as Alexander looked toward the future, he knew that the greatest decision he had ever made was not a political choice or a royal command. It was choosing to see the heart of the woman standing beside him. The years that followed brought a new chapter to Ravensshire Kingdom, one built not only on tradition, but on understanding. The palace that once felt distant and unfamiliar to Sophia Bennet became a place where she could finally belong without pretending to be someone else. She had entered the royal world as the Omega everyone underestimated, the woman many believed would never have a place among powerful families. But time revealed what others had failed to see. Her value was never measured by her title. It was revealed through every choice she made, every person she helped, and every moment when she chose kindness instead of bitterness. Alexander Ravensshire often thought about the night they first met during the Luna ceremony. He remembered the way Sophia stood quietly while others judged her. He remembered how she carried herself with dignity when the entire room expected her to break. That moment changed the way he viewed strength forever. Before meeting Sophia, Alexander believed being a great ruler meant carrying every burden alone and never showing uncertainty. But Sophia taught him that leadership was not about standing above everyone else. It was about standing beside them. Together, they helped create a kingdom where people were valued for their character instead of their background. The old beliefs that once limited many Omegas slowly began to disappear. Families started teaching their children that respect was something every person deserved. The court learned that tradition could remain meaningful, while still allowing room for compassion and change. Sophia never forgot where she came from. Even after gaining the respect of the kingdom, she continued visiting villages, listening to ordinary people, and helping those who felt unseen. She knew exactly what it felt like to be ignored, and she wanted no one else to experience that loneliness. Alexander admired this part of her more than anything else. She had gained influence without ever seeking power. She had earned loyalty without demanding it. One evening, many years after the ceremony that changed everything, Alexander and Sophia returned to the grand hall where their journey began. The candles still illuminated the same walls, and the traditions of the kingdom continued around them. But the meaning of that place had changed completely. Sophia looked around and remembered the girl she had once been, standing alone and wondering if anyone would ever see her true worth. Alexander stood beside her and gently said, "The kingdom sees you now, but I hope you always remember that your worth existed long before anyone recognized it." Sophia smiled because she understood. She had not become valuable because a king noticed her. The king noticed her because she was already valuable. Their story became a reminder throughout Ravensshire Kingdom that destiny was not always found through power or status. Sometimes destiny arrived through a simple act of courage and compassion. Sometimes the person who changes the future is the one who chooses to care when the world chooses to look away. And the bond between the Lycan King and the Omega who was once forgotten became a story passed through generations, reminding everyone that true strength was never measured by how much power someone held, but by how much kindness they carried within their heart.